I think it's got something to do with the way we define both disability and capacity. I've raised this question more recently, but I'll raise it here because I think it's a question that we really want an answer to, and I think it's an unsatisfactory answer at the moment. When people talk about assessing someone's capacity to be in paid work, they define that solely in terms of the individual. In other words, there is no consideration taken of the kind of environment that we live in, the kind of economic reality that we live in, or the kinds of attitudes and barriers that otherwise exist that actually, despite our capacity, get in the way of us actually being able to get into paid work. So I think as part of the process of welfare rethinking, we need to introduce the idea of a capacity test for the environment around us, because I think that becomes more critical for us at different times when we are being assessed as to our capacity. And there's a risk here, of course, because we do want to get across the message that we not only have the capacity and the potential to contribute, but we are, and we do, every day in every community. And that isn't recognised enough. So it's hard when you're trying to argue that we do have capacity and that we do have potential and we can contribute and do contribute, to then say, well, yeah, but hang on, there's some problems when it comes to getting paid work. So we've got to balance that argument up very carefully. But unless you bring in considerations of what is the work situation like in a particular community for particular people in real time, at the ground level, we're going to get it wrong sometimes about who has the capacity to get a job at this particular point in time. And of course, we've also got to think about, is it just any job at any pay rate? We had a long battle to win the right for people who are disabled to get at least a minimum wage. And we're still probably going through that process to remove people from a situation where employment legislation was denied because of the particular act that applied at the time. So we have this constant argument and discussion about the relationship between ourselves as individuals and what opportunities might be available. So it's not just any job. You can be in a very low-paying, casual job that might actually mean that in the end, by the time you've paid for transport, which may or may not be accessible, which may or may not be there, by the time you've paid for all that, you might actually be getting as an income something less than you might have been getting on the evidence benefit. Well, okay, so you're off the benefit, the taxpayer doesn't have to worry about you anymore, but does that mean you are better off? You might argue that because you've got some kind of work that maybe that is better off, but that's the question we've got to ask. Are we just talking about getting off benefit into any job just because the whole point is to get off the benefit, rather than looking at the kind of work that's available and actually working to make a variety of jobs available so that people's strengths can be maximised, that the things that people are interested in become the motivation for the kind of job that they do, rather than just saying that's got to be something that is paying at some level. So we've got to look at what supports are around to enable people to access employment and to make that transition something which leaves people better off rather than worse off. And there are things about the benefit system that work against us. We know that because we know the abatement regime, for instance, is very savage, and that you don't have to be earning very much more money if you are in some kind of 15, maybe 5, 10 hours a week work for you to lose what benefit you do have and some of the other allowances that go with it, and therefore again you are in a much worse position. We've got to really look at how we can complement people's income should they be successful in getting some paid work that actually interests them and is what they want to do, but make sure that the benefit system works to enable that to happen rather than act to prevent that from happening or make it a situation where people are worse off. So there's got to be some serious work done on the relationship between people getting some kind of benefit and also maybe getting some kind of paid work as well. And we know that that can happen because there are people who are in that situation. And I think that that needs to be looked at in terms of the extra cost of disability might be one consideration, for instance. That might go into considerations around how you use the benefit system to complement rather than prevent. So I think the most important message that I would want to get across to the people who are making decisions about what we do about our welfare system in the future is that if we continue to locate both disability and ability within the individual solely, then we lose the essence of the question. Disability is not something we have, it's something that happens to us as a consequence of the way the environment interacts with us and our particular configuration or conditions or impairments or characteristics. Likewise, our ability is also related to the environment that we live in. Are we able to contribute? Are we able to maximise our potential or not? So that may sit within the individual, but unless you've got an environment that's responsive, supportive and enabling rather than disabling, then we don't get much further on. So we've got to lose this individual focus and seeing things as sited in individuals and move to looking at welfare in relation to communities, to society in general, and to the way in which we can work together to make things happen. Kia ora koutou.